I found out my fiance's family business is responsible for my brother's death, and now I don't know if I should go through with the wedding. I, 29F, am supposed to be getting married in 2 weeks to the love of my life, Ryan, 31M. We've been together for 3 years, engaged for 1, and everything was perfect until 3 days ago when my entire world shattered. I need to get this off my chest because I honestly don't know what to do anymore. For context, my younger brother Jake died 5 years ago from what was ruled as an industrial accident at a construction site. He was only 22 and had just graduated college. The company he worked for, Meridian Development, was found negligent in their safety protocols, but they settled with my family out of court. The settlement came with NDAs, so we couldn't pursue further legal action or talk publicly about the details. My parents took the money because they were devastated and just wanted it to be over, but I always felt there was more to the story that we never got to hear. Fast forward to now. Ryan comes from a wealthy family that owns several businesses across the state. I've met his parents many times. His father Richard is stern but polite, and his mother Elaine has always been warm to me, if a bit reserved. Ryan works as the VP of operations for their main company, Bradford Enterprises, but he's always been vague about exactly what they do. He usually just says real estate development and investments, and I never pushed because, honestly, it sounded boring and I didn't think it mattered. 3 days ago, I was helping Ryan's assistant Meredith organize some files for a charity event our families are co-hosting for the wedding. Ryan was out of town on business, and I volunteered to help since I had the day off. While going through some old photos for the slideshow, I found a folder labeled Meridian Acquisition, 2017. My heart stopped when I saw that name. I shouldn't have opened it, but I couldn't help myself. Inside were documents showing that Meridian Development was actually a subsidiary of Bradford Enterprises, Ryan's family company. They had purchased it 2 years before Jake's accident and then dissolved it immediately after the settlement with my family. There were emails between Richard, Ryan's father, and their lawyers discussing how to minimize exposure and contain the PR damage from the incident with the Collins boy. My brother. They were talking about my dead brother like he was just a problem to solve. I felt sick. I made copies of everything and left before anyone could see me. I've been holed up in my apartment for 3 days, ignoring calls from Ryan and everyone else. He knows something is wrong but has no idea what. I haven't told anyone what I found. Here's where it gets complicated. I've gone through all the documents multiple times, and there's no evidence that Ryan knew about any of this. His name isn't on any of the emails or documents related to the accident or settlement. But he is the VP of operations now, and I find it hard to believe he never knew his family's company was responsible for my brother's death. We've been together for 3 years, and he's met my family countless times. He's listened to me talk about Jake, how much I miss him, how unfair his death was. He held me on the anniversaries when I couldn't stop crying. Was it all a lie? Has he been hiding this from me our entire relationship? Or is it possible he genuinely didn't know? I'm supposed to marry him in 2 weeks. Our families have spent a fortune on this wedding. Everyone is flying in. But how can I walk down the aisle with him now? On the other hand, what if he really didn't know? Do I confront him? His parents? My parents don't even know what I've discovered yet. Part of me wants to call off the wedding immediately and expose everything. Another part is terrified of losing Ryan if he's innocent in all this. And I'm also worried about my parents. They've finally started to heal from Jake's death, and I don't want to rip that wound open again if there's nothing that can be done. I honestly don't know what to do. Am I the asshole if I confront Ryan about this right before our wedding? Or would I be the asshole if I married him without knowing the truth? Update 1. First, I want to thank everyone for their advice and support. I never expected this post to blow up like it did. After reading through hundreds of comments, I finally worked up the courage to talk to Ryan last night. I asked him to come to my apartment instead of meeting at his place like we usually do. When he arrived, I could tell he was worried. I'd been ignoring his calls for days, and he kept asking if I was having second thoughts about the wedding. I didn't want to ambush him, so I started by asking general questions about his family's business. He seemed confused but answered everything openly. Ryan, I finally said, does Bradford Enterprises have any connection to Meridian Development? The look on his face changed immediately. He went pale and asked, how do you know that name? I showed him the copies I'd made, and for a long moment, he just stared at them without speaking. I can explain, he finally said, his voice shaking. I found out 2 years ago. I was going through old acquisition files and saw the name Meridian. I remembered you mentioning it was the company Jake worked for, so I dug deeper. When I realized what had happened. God, Emma, I wanted to tell you so many times. I asked why he didn't, and he broke down completely. I've never seen him cry like that before. My father made me promise not to. He said it would only cause more pain for your family, that the settlement was done, and bringing it up would just reopen wounds. I justified keeping quiet because I thought he was right. What good would it do to tell you now? But the truth is, I was selfish. I was afraid of losing you. I didn't know what to feel. On one hand, he didn't hide it from me our entire relationship, he only found out after we were already together. On the other hand, he's still been lying to me for 2 years. Did you know your family dissolved Meridian to avoid further liability? I asked. Ryan looked shocked. What? No, I thought it was just a normal business decision. The acquisition papers I found didn't have those details. I showed him the emails about containing the PR damage, and he looked genuinely horrified. He swore he had no idea his father had been so calculated about it all. I need to talk to my dad, he said. This is not okay. None of this is okay. He begged me not to make any decisions about the wedding yet, said he would get to the bottom of everything and make it right somehow. I'm still processing how I feel, but seeing his reaction did make me believe he wasn't complicit in the initial cover-up. I don't know what happens next. Ryan left to confront his father, and I still haven't told my parents anything. The wedding is still technically on, but I honestly don't know if I can go through with it. I'll post another update after Ryan talks to his family. Update 2. It's been 48 hours since my last update, and things have escalated beyond what I could have imagined. After Ryan left to confront his father, I didn't hear from him for almost 24 hours. I was going crazy with anxiety, checking my phone constantly and jumping every time it buzzed. When he finally called, he sounded exhausted and asked if he could come over. When he arrived at my apartment, I barely recognized him. His eyes were bloodshot, hair disheveled, and he looked like he hadn't slept at all. He collapsed onto my couch and just stared at the ceiling for a minute before speaking. I confronted my father, he said quietly. It was worse than I thought, Emma. So much worse. According to Ryan, when he showed Richard the documents, his father didn't even try to deny anything. Instead, he coldly explained that what happened to Jake was unfortunate but ultimately a business decision. The Meridian acquisition had been troubled from the start, the company was cutting corners on safety to save money, and Bradford Enterprises knew it when they bought them. But instead of investing in proper safety measures, they continued the same practices to maximize profits until they could flip the company. My father knew the site where Jake was working was dangerous, Ryan said, his voice cracking. There had been 3 other incidents in the months before, but they were minor enough to cover up. They were planning to update the equipment the following quarter, but they wanted to finish the current project first to avoid delays. I felt sick listening to this. My brother died because some executive decided that replacing faulty equipment wasn't cost-effective right away. But there was more. The emails I found were just the tip of the iceberg. Ryan's father admitted they had evidence that would have resulted in criminal charges if it had come to light, documentation proving they knowingly continued using equipment that had failed safety inspections. The settlement and NDAs were specifically designed to bury this evidence. He told me all of this like he was discussing the weather, Ryan said, tears streaming down his face. Like my fiance's brother was just acceptable collateral damage in some corporate spreadsheet. When I told him I wanted to make it right, to tell your family the truth, he threatened to disown me and said he'd deny everything. Then came the biggest shock of all. Ryan reached into his pocket and pulled out a USB drive. I took everything, he whispered. Every file, every email, every piece of evidence about what they did. When my father realized what I was doing, he tried to stop me. Things got physical. Ryan pulled up his sleeve to reveal a dark bruise blooming on his arm. He said I was throwing away my future for some dead kid and a girl who would leave me anyway once she found out the truth. He said I was weak and that business requires making hard decisions. The way Ryan described it, he and his father got into a full-blown fight. His mother tried to intervene, begging them both to calm down. In the end, Ryan walked out with the evidence, and his father told him not to come back until he came to his senses. I don't care about the company anymore, Emma. I don't care about the money or my inheritance or anything else. I just want to make this right. For you, for Jake, for your family. Whatever that means, even if it means losing you. I was overwhelmed. Part of me felt vindicated that Ryan was choosing to stand up to his family. Another part was still processing the horror of what his family had done. And yet another part couldn't help wondering if this grand gesture was too little, too late. What exactly are you planning to do with that evidence? I asked him. Ryan took a deep breath. That's up to you. We could take it to the police, or a lawyer, or the media. The NDAs your family signed might not hold up if there was criminal negligence involved. Or, we could take it directly to your parents and let them decide. The mention of my parents hit me hard. I still hadn't told them anything, and our wedding was now just 12 days away. How could I drop this bombshell on them after 5 years of them trying to heal? I need to think, I told Ryan. And I need to talk to my parents first, before we do anything else. Ryan nodded and got up to leave, but I couldn't let him go back to his place, not after what happened with his father. So he slept on my couch, and I spent the night staring at my ceiling, trying to figure out what the hell I was going to do next. The next morning, I called my parents and asked them to come over for lunch. I didn't tell them why, just that it was important. Ryan offered to leave, but I wanted him there. They deserved to hear his part of the story too. When my parents arrived, they could immediately tell something was wrong. My mom hugged me tightly and whispered, "Wedding jitters? It's normal, sweetheart. If only it were that simple." We sat them down, and I started by explaining how I found the documents. With each word, my father's face grew darker, while my mother just kept shaking her head in disbelief. When I finished, Ryan took over, telling them everything his father had admitted. My dad, who had been silent until then, suddenly stood up and lunged at Ryan. "You knew? All this time, you knew?" I jumped between them as my mother pulled my father back. "I only found out 2 years ago," Ryan said, not even trying to defend himself. "And I should have told you immediately." There's no excuse for my silence. My father was shaking with rage. "Do you have any idea what losing Jake did to us? To our family? And your father? Your father knew that equipment was faulty?" Ryan nodded miserably and handed over the USB drive, explaining what was on it. My parents sat in stunned silence as they processed everything. Finally, my mother spoke. "What do you want to do, Emma? It's your wedding, your future." That's the question I've been asking myself for days now. What do I want? Part of me still loves Ryan, and I believe he's trying to do the right thing now. But he still hid this from me for 2 years. I don't know if I can ever look at him without thinking about Jake and what his family did. As for the wedding? My father says I should call it off immediately. My mother is more hesitant, saying I should take my time to decide. Ryan says he'll respect whatever choice I make. We're supposed to meet with a lawyer tomorrow to go over the evidence and see what options my family has. The NDAs might be void if criminal negligence can be proven, but that would mean a long, public legal battle that would dredge up all the pain of losing Jake again. I honestly don't know what to do. About the wedding. About Ryan. About any of it. Part of me just wants to run away from everything. Update 3. The meeting with the lawyer yesterday was intense. Michelle, the attorney we consulted, spent hours going through the files Ryan provided. Her assessment was blunt: there's enough evidence here to potentially pursue criminal charges against Bradford Enterprises, specifically against Richard and several other executives who were aware of the safety violations. The NDAs your family signed wouldn't hold up in court if it can be proven they were designed to conceal criminal activity, she explained. But I have to be honest, this would be a lengthy, expensive, and very public battle. The Bradfords have deep pockets and connections throughout the state. My father didn't hesitate. "I don't care how long it takes or what it costs. They killed my son and covered it up." My mother was more conflicted. She turned to Ryan, who had been silent throughout most of the meeting. "Would you testify against your own father if it came to that?" The question hung in the air. Ryan looked physically ill but nodded. "Yes. What he did. What my family did. It was wrong. Jake deserved better. Your family deserves justice." Michelle advised us not to make any decisions right away. She wanted to review the materials more thoroughly and consult with some colleagues who specialize in corporate criminal liability. She also warned us that as soon as we took any formal action, the Bradfords would likely come at us with everything they had. On our way out of the lawyer's office, Ryan's phone wouldn't stop buzzing. He had been ignoring calls from his family, but now there were dozens of messages, not just from his parents but from other relatives and family friends too. Word had gotten out. "My father must have told people his version of what's happening," Ryan said grimly. We were barely in the parking lot when a sleek black car pulled up beside us. The window rolled down to reveal Elaine, Ryan's mother. Her eyes were red-rimmed, but her expression was composed. "Ryan, please. Just 5 minutes," she pleaded. My parents tensed up, and my father looked like he might say something, but I put a hand on his arm. This confrontation was inevitable. Ryan looked at me questioningly, and I nodded. He walked over to his mother's car while my parents and I waited by our vehicle. They talked for about 10 minutes. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but their body language told me enough. Elaine was animated, gesturing emphatically while Ryan kept shaking his head. At one point, she reached out to touch his face, and he pulled away. When he finally walked back to us, his expression was grim. "My mother says my father is willing to offer a new settlement. 3 times what your family received before, no questions asked, if we agree to destroy the evidence and sign new NDAs." My father exploded. "They think they can just throw more money at this? After what they did to Jake?" Ryan looked defeated. She also said. "She said my father has evidence that I've been embezzling from the company. It's not true, he's fabricating it. But he'll use it against me if I testify." "Can he do that?" I asked, horrified. "Richard Bradford can do whatever he wants," my mother said quietly. "Men like him always can." We went back to my parents' house to regroup. The wedding was now just 10 days away, and we had decisions to make. Guests had booked flights, venues were paid for, everything was ready. But how could we possibly go through with it now? Ryan and I stepped outside to talk privately on the back porch. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the yard where Jake and I used to play as kids. "I'll understand if you want to call it off," Ryan said, not meeting my eyes. "The wedding, us, everything. You didn't sign up for any of this." "And what about you?" I asked. "Are you ready to lose your entire family, your inheritance, your career? Because that's what will happen if we pursue this." Ryan was quiet for a long moment. "When I was 16, I crashed my father's car. Nothing serious, just a fender bender, but I was terrified to tell him. When I finally did, he didn't yell. He just looked disappointed and said, 'Ryan, in this world, there are people who make hard choices and people who run from them. I've spent my entire life trying not to be someone who runs.' He took my hands in his. I love you, Emma. And I didn't know Jake, but from everything you've told me, I know he was an amazing person who deserves so much better. I won't run from this, no matter what it costs me. I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to so badly. But doubt still gnawed at me. Why didn't you tell me 2 years ago, when you first found out? I asked, the question that had been burning inside me from the start. Ryan's shoulders slumped. Because I'm a coward. Because I told myself I was protecting you from more pain. Because I was afraid of losing you. Take your pick, they're all true and they're all terrible reasons. He looked up at me, his eyes filled with tears. I will regret that decision for the rest of my life. I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to forgive him, to believe that people can make mistakes and still deserve a second chance. Another part couldn't shake the feeling that trust, once broken, might never fully heal. We were interrupted by my father calling us back inside. He had a determined look on his face that I recognized all too well. I've made a decision, he announced. Tomorrow morning, I'm going to Bradford Enterprises to talk to Richard myself. Dad, no. I protested. After everything we've learned, you can't go there alone. I'm not asking permission, Emma. I need to look that man in the eye. My mother tried to dissuade him too, but his mind was made up. Ryan offered to go with him, but my father refused. This is between me and him. The next morning, my father drove to Bradford Enterprises headquarters. We were all sick with worry, but he insisted on doing this alone. He was gone for 3 hours. When he finally returned, he looked 10 years older but somehow at peace. Richard received me in his office, he told us. Tried to intimidate me with his big desk and his view of the city. I told him I knew everything, about the faulty equipment, the cover-up, all of it. He didn't deny anything. My father paused, seeming to struggle with his next words. He said businesses make calculated risks every day. That for every Jake, there are 1,000 projects that complete without incident. That it was unfortunate my son was the statistical anomaly. Ryan looked disgusted. That sounds like my father. I asked him how he sleeps at night, my father continued. He said, very well, on a very expensive mattress. Then he offered me the money again, even more this time. Said we could all move on with our lives. What did you tell him? My mother whispered. My father's expression hardened. I told him to shove his money up his ass. That no amount would ever be enough to pay for Jake's life. And then, I told him I felt sorry for him. Sorry for him? Ryan repeated incredulously. Yes. Because he'll never know what it means to love someone more than money or power or his precious reputation. Because when he dies, people might attend his funeral out of obligation, but no one will mourn him the way we mourn Jake. My father's voice broke. I told him that makes him the poorest man I've ever met. There was stunned silence as we absorbed this. Finally, my father turned to Ryan. You're not your father, son. I can see that now. Whatever Emma decides about the wedding, about your future together, know that I don't hold his sins against you anymore. Ryan looked overwhelmed by this unexpected absolution. I was too. For 5 years, my father had carried his grief like armor. This was the first crack I'd seen in it. Later that night, as Ryan and I walked around my neighborhood trying to clear our heads, he got a text from his mother. Your father had a heart attack. He's at Memorial Hospital. Please come. Ryan froze, staring at his phone. I have to go. I didn't hesitate. I'm coming with you. We rushed to the hospital to find Elaine in the waiting room, pale and shaking. When she saw Ryan, she ran to him and collapsed in his arms. Then she noticed me standing there and stiffened. What is she doing here? She hissed. Emma is my fiance, Ryan said firmly. She stays. How's Dad? Elaine composed herself. He's stable. The doctors say it was a mild attack, brought on by stress. Her eyes narrowed at me. Stress caused by your father's visit and your betrayal. I felt a surge of anger. My brother is dead because of decisions your husband made. Don't talk to me about betrayal. Ryan stepped between us. Stop, both of you. This isn't helping anyone. Can I see him? He doesn't want to see you, Elaine replied coldly. He said, and I quote, if that ungrateful traitor shows his face, tell him he's no longer my son. I'm sorry, Ryan, but you've made your choice. The words hung in the air like a physical presence. Ryan's face went blank, a defense mechanism I'd seen before when he was deeply hurt. Fine, he said eventually. Tell him I hope he recovers quickly. And that my offer still stands, he can do the right thing, or we can let the courts decide. As we left the hospital, Ryan was unnaturally quiet. I wanted to comfort him but didn't know how. His entire life was imploding because of me, because of my family. Was I being selfish asking him to choose between his family and mine? Between his future and justice for Jake? The wedding was now just a week away. Guests were starting to arrive in town. My phone was filled with messages from friends asking about rehearsal dinners and bachelorette parties, completely unaware of the drama unfolding. Ryan's best man called to ask why Ryan wasn't returning his texts about the bachelor party. That night, lying in bed with Ryan finally asleep beside me after hours of tossing and turning, I made a decision. I would call off the wedding. Not because I didn't love Ryan, but because I couldn't ask him to sacrifice everything for a battle that wasn't his. It wasn't fair to either of us to start our marriage under these circumstances. We needed time to process, to heal, to figure out what justice for Jake really looked like. I fell asleep having made peace with my decision, only to be woken 2 hours later by Ryan sitting bolt upright in bed, gasping for air. "I remember," he gasped, turning to me with wide eyes. "Emma, I remember." I sat up, instantly alert. "Remember what?" Ryan ran his hands through his hair, looking almost manic. "The safety inspector. There was a safety inspector who came to Meridian a few weeks before Jake's accident. I met him." "What? How? You said you didn't know about Meridian until 2 years ago," I said, confusion and suspicion mixing in my gut. "My father took me to a job site that summer. I was home from college, and he wanted me to see how things were run before I started at the company after graduation. I didn't connect it until now, but it was a Meridian site." Ryan was speaking rapidly, the words tumbling out. "There was this guy, Martinez I think his name was, who was inspecting the equipment. He got into a huge argument with the site manager while we were there." My heart was pounding. What were they arguing about? "The crane. The same type of crane that..." Ryan couldn't finish the sentence. "Martinez was saying it needed to be decommissioned immediately. The site manager kept saying they couldn't afford the downtime in the middle of the project." My father pulled them both aside into the trailer office. I didn't hear what was said, but when they came out, Martinez looked defeated. He left, and work continued. I felt sick. "So your father personally intervened to keep faulty equipment operating? Equipment that killed my brother weeks later?" Ryan nodded, his face ashen. "I didn't make the connection until now. I swear, Emma. It was just some random site visit to me at the time. I didn't even know the company name was Meridian." I believed him. The memory seemed to genuinely shake him, and it explained why his father had been so insistent on keeping Ryan away from anything related to Jake's death. Richard Bradford knew his son had been there that day. "Martinez," I repeated. "Do you think we could find him? He could be a witness." "If my father hasn't bought him off already," Ryan said grimly. "But yes, we could try." The next morning, we called Michelle, the lawyer, and told her about Ryan's recollection. She said she'd try to locate Martinez through public records of safety inspections from that time period. It was a long shot, but it was something. Meanwhile, I decided to tell Ryan about my decision to postpone the wedding. With everything else going on, it felt almost trivial now, but it still needed to be said. "I think we should call it off," I told him over coffee. "Not us, just the wedding. At least for now." I expected disappointment, maybe even an argument. Instead, Ryan looked relieved. "I've been thinking the same thing," he admitted. "It doesn't feel right to be celebrating when your family is going through all this again. And my family? Well, they obviously won't be attending." It was a practical decision, but it still hurt. This was supposed to be the happiest time of our lives, and instead, we were sitting in my kitchen discussing how to cancel a wedding with only days to go. The logistics were a nightmare. We spent the entire day making calls to the venue, the caterers, the florist, the photographer. Most of the deposits were non-refundable, which was a financial hit but seemed meaningless compared to everything else. The hardest calls were to our friends and relatives, trying to explain why the wedding was off without getting into the painful details. My maid of honor, Jess, refused to accept our vague explanation and showed up at my apartment that evening, demanding the truth. "You guys have been together for 3 years, she insisted, looking between Ryan and me. "I've never seen you happier than when you're together. Whatever this is, you can work through it." So we told her everything. As the story unfolded, Jess's expression shifted from confusion to horror to fury. "Those bastards," she whispered when we finished. Then she turned to Ryan. "But you're standing with Emma now. That's what matters. Is it enough, though?" I asked, voicing the doubt that had been plaguing me. "His family killed my brother, Jess. How do we come back from that?" Jess didn't have an answer. None of us did. The next day, Michelle called with surprising news. She had located Eduardo Martinez, the safety inspector from Ryan's memory. He was living in Arizona now, having left the industry shortly after Jake's accident. "He's willing to talk," Michelle said. "But only in person, and only if we guarantee his anonymity for now. Apparently, he's been carrying this around for years." Ryan and I flew to Phoenix that same day. We met Martinez at a quiet restaurant on the outskirts of the city. He was in his late 50s, with graying hair and the weathered look of someone who had spent most of his life working outdoors. "I remember that day," he said after we introduced ourselves. "The Bradford kid was there with his father. Watching, learning the family business." He gave Ryan a hard look. "You grew up nice." Ryan flinched but didn't respond to the jab. "Did you know the equipment you flagged ended up killing someone?" Martinez's face darkened. "I found out after it happened. Read about it in the news. I tried to come forward, told my supervisor I had documented the safety violations weeks before. Next thing I know, I'm being called into a meeting with the company lawyers. They reminded me that I had signed off on the final inspection. But you didn't, I said, suddenly understanding. They forged your approval. Got it in one, Martinez confirmed. They showed me the paperwork with my signature on it. Perfect forgery. Said if I made noise, they'd claim I was incompetent or on the take. It would be my word against Bradford Enterprises. I had a family, a mortgage. I couldn't fight them. So you quit instead, Ryan concluded. Moved states, changed careers. But I've never forgotten that young man who died. Or how I failed him. Martinez looked directly at me. If he was your brother, I'm truly sorry. I couldn't speak past the lump in my throat. Ryan reached over and squeezed my hand. Would you be willing to testify now? He asked Martinez. To tell the truth about what happened? Martinez hesitated. Bradford ruined my career once. They could still make trouble for me. We have evidence, Ryan assured him. Documents proving they knew about the equipment issues. Your testimony would corroborate what we already have. After a long silence, Martinez nodded. For that boy's family. Yes, I'll testify. When we flew back home the next day, there was a renewed sense of purpose between us. With Martinez's testimony and the documents Ryan had taken, we had a real chance at justice for Jake. Michelle was cautiously optimistic when we called to update her. But our fragile hope was shattered when we arrived at my apartment to find it had been broken into. The place was torn apart, drawers emptied, furniture overturned. The USB drive with the evidence was gone. So was my laptop and the hard copies we had made. It's my father, Ryan said, his face pale with fury. It has to be. We called the police, but I knew it was pointless. Professional thieves wouldn't leave fingerprints, and they had taken only specific items while leaving other valuables untouched. This was a targeted operation. While the police were taking our statement, Ryan's phone rang. It was a number he didn't recognize. He put it on speaker. Ryan Bradford? A male voice asked. Yes, who is this? Consider this a friendly warning. The Martinez family had a break-in last night too. Nobody was hurt, but they're pretty shaken up. If you continue with this crusade of yours, next time might be different. Back off now. The call disconnected. Ryan and I stared at each other in horror. The police officer who had been taking our statement looked concerned. That sounded like a threat, she said. Who was that? I don't know, Ryan replied, but the look he gave me said otherwise. We both knew who was behind this. After the police left, promising to investigate but warning us not to expect much, Ryan and I sat in my ransacked living room, trying to process what had happened. They're threatening Martinez and his family now, I said, my voice shaking. All because of us. Because we wouldn't take the money and stay quiet. This has gone too far, Ryan agreed. We need to tell Michelle what happened. And we need to make sure Martinez and his family are safe. But before we could call the lawyer, there was a knock at the door. Ryan tensed, moving protectively in front of me as I went to check the peephole. It was Elaine Bradford. I turned to Ryan, unsure what to do. He nodded grimly, and I opened the door. Elaine stepped inside, surveying the damage to my apartment with an unreadable expression. She was immaculately dressed as always, not a hair out of place despite the late hour. Did your husband send people to do this? I demanded, too angry to be intimidated. Richard doesn't know I'm here, she replied calmly. And no, he didn't order this specifically. But he has. Associates who handle problems for him. They have certain methods. Ryan stepped forward. You need to leave, mother. If you're here to threaten us or offer more money, we're not interested. Elaine sighed heavily. I'm not here for either of those things. I'm here because this has to stop before someone else gets hurt. She reached into her purse, and for one terrifying moment, I thought she might pull out a weapon. Instead, she produced a small flash drive. This contains everything. The original safety reports. The emails ordering the cover-up. The payments to officials to look the other way. Even the contract with the firm that was hired to forge Martinez's signature. Ryan stared at his mother in disbelief. Why are you giving us this? Because your father had another heart attack this afternoon. A major one. He's in surgery now. Elaine's composure finally cracked, tears welling in her eyes. I've spent 35 years looking the other way, telling myself that business is business. But watching you walk away from everything for the sake of what's right. It made me realize how far we've all fallen. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. After everything that had happened, Elaine Bradford was switching sides? Why should we trust you? I asked. You shouldn't, Elaine admitted. I wouldn't, in your position. But I'm tired, Emma. Tired of the lies, tired of watching my husband destroy our family to protect his precious company. And I'm tired of knowing that boy died because of decisions we made. She placed the flash drive on my coffee table. Everything is there. Do with it what you will. I won't stop you anymore. After Elaine left, Ryan and I stared at the flash drive like it might explode. Could we trust it? Was it another trick? We decided to call Michelle immediately. She agreed to meet us at her office despite the late hour, bringing along a tech expert she trusted. If this was genuine evidence, we needed to secure it properly this time. The expert spent hours going through the files while we waited anxiously. Finally, around 3 a.m., He emerged from the conference room where he'd been working. "It's legitimate," he confirmed. "And it's comprehensive. Whoever compiled this knew exactly what they were looking for and where to find it. There's material here that goes beyond what you previously had, direct evidence of criminal negligence and fraud." Michelle was blunt about what this meant. "With this evidence, we could pursue criminal charges against multiple Bradford Enterprises executives, including Richard Bradford personally. The company would likely face massive fines, and individuals could be looking at prison time." Ryan looked both relieved and devastated. "My father could go to prison." "Yes," Michelle confirmed. "Given his health situation, a good defense attorney might argue for house arrest, but yes, prison is a very real possibility." We left the law office as dawn was breaking, the weight of our decision hanging over us. The evidence was now safely backed up in multiple secure locations. All that remained was to decide whether to move forward with legal action. My parents were surprisingly conflicted when we told them about the new evidence. My father, who had been the most adamant about pursuing justice, seemed troubled by the thought of Richard Bradford, now fighting for his life after a second heart attack, facing prosecution. "I wanted him to pay," my father admitted. "But I'm not sure this is how Jake would want it." My brother had been gentle, forgiving to a fault. He once spent 3 days helping the kid who bullied him in high school fix his car before prom. That was Jake, always seeing the best in people, always giving second chances. Ryan, meanwhile, seemed to be collapsing under the strain. The father he had idolized all his life was not just flawed but potentially criminally culpable in a young man's death. The family business he had been groomed to take over was built on cutting corners and silencing victims. His entire life as he knew it was crumbling, and it was partly by his own hand. I found him sitting alone on my balcony that night, staring out at the city lights. "I don't know who I am anymore," he confessed when I joined him. "Everything I thought I knew about myself, my family, my future. It was all built on lies." I didn't have answers for him. I was still figuring out who we were to each other now, still processing whether our love could survive being born from such tragedy. For the next 3 days, we existed in a strange limbo. The wedding was officially postponed, with most guests having returned home. Richard remained in the hospital, his condition serious but stable. Elaine called Ryan daily with updates but didn't pressure him about the evidence or the potential legal case. On the 4th day, something unexpected happened. My mother, who had been quieter than usual, asked to meet with all of us, Ryan, my father, and me. She arrived carrying a shoebox I hadn't seen in years. Inside were letters Jake had written from college and his first job, photos of him in his hard hat at the construction site, proud of his first real job. "I've been reading these again," she explained, laying out the contents on the table. "Trying to remember who Jake really was, not just how he died." She picked up one of the letters. "He wrote this 3 weeks before the accident. Listen." She read aloud, "The site manager finally let me operate the crane today, just simple lifts, but it felt amazing, Mom. Being trusted with something that powerful, knowing people's safety depends on you doing your job right. I keep thinking about how many families will live in the building we're constructing. Kids will grow up there, have their first steps, first heartbreaks, all in spaces I helped build. That's a responsibility I take seriously." My mother's voice broke on the last words. Jake cared about building things that would keep people safe. About creating spaces where families could thrive. She looked directly at Ryan. "I think he would want Bradford Enterprises to become that kind of company, not just be destroyed in court." Ryan seemed confused. "What are you suggesting?" My father, who had been silent until now, spoke up. "We've been talking about it, your mother and I. What if, instead of prison time and fines that just go to the government, we push for a different kind of justice?" Over the next hour, they outlined an idea that had been forming between them. What if, instead of criminal prosecution, we pushed for a settlement that would fundamentally transform Bradford Enterprises? A settlement that would include creating a foundation in Jake's name dedicated to construction site safety, funded by Bradford Enterprises for a minimum of 20 years. Mandatory safety protocols that exceeded industry standards at all Bradford projects. A scholarship program for students pursuing careers in occupational safety. Annual independent safety audits with results made public. A leadership role for Ryan in implementing these changes. The company has resources, influence, connections, my father explained. Used properly, they could prevent other families from going through what we did. Putting Richard in prison might satisfy our anger, but it won't save anyone else's son. I was stunned by their proposal. After 5 years of grief and rage, my parents were choosing transformation over punishment. And they were offering Ryan a path to redemption, a way to reclaim his family legacy by reshaping it into something honorable. Ryan was overwhelmed. I don't know if my father would ever agree to this. Admitting fault publicly goes against everything he believes in. He might not have a choice, Michelle pointed out when we brought the proposal to her the next day. The evidence you have is damning. If the alternative is criminal charges, years of ugly litigation, and potential prison time, this could be presented as the better option, especially given his health. The negotiation process was brutal. Richard, participating from his hospital bed with his corporate attorneys present, initially rejected the idea outright. He only relented when Elaine threatened to testify against him herself. The final agreement included everything my parents had asked for, plus financial compensation for other workers who had been injured at Meridian sites. Most importantly to me, it included a public acknowledgement of responsibility for Jake's death and an apology to my family. The foundation, the Jake Collins Construction Safety Initiative, was announced 3 months later. Ryan was named as its executive director, with a board that included safety experts, former construction workers, and my father. They've already begun implementing new training programs and equipment inspections at construction sites across the state. Richard Bradford resigned as CEO of Bradford Enterprises, citing health reasons. He's under house arrest now, serving a reduced 2-year sentence with community service requirements. Our agreement didn't completely shield him from criminal consequences, but it did significantly reduce them. He and my father now meet monthly to discuss the foundation's work, strange, tense meetings that I can't begin to imagine. As for Ryan and me, we're still together. The wedding hasn't been rescheduled yet. Some days, I look at him and still feel the echo of that horrible discovery, the knowledge that his family's actions took my brother from us. Other days, I'm overwhelmed by his courage in standing up for the truth, even when it cost him nearly everything. We're in therapy, both individually and as a couple. Rebuilding trust is a daily practice. Some of my relatives still can't look at Ryan without seeing Bradford Enterprises and what they did to Jake. Some of his relatives blame him for his father's downfall and health problems. But we're trying. Because in the middle of all this darkness and betrayal, we found something I never expected, a chance to honor Jake's memory in a way that might actually save lives. A chance to transform a corporation that once valued profit over people into a force for good in the industry. I don't know if Ryan and I will make it in the long run. The foundation of our relationship was built on a devastating secret, and those fault lines may never fully heal. But I do know that both of us are committed to making something meaningful from this tragedy. Jake used to say that how you respond to mistakes matters more than the mistakes themselves. In his honor, we're trying to build something better from the ruins of what was broken. It's not the happy ending I thought I was getting when Ryan proposed a year ago. But maybe, in time, it can be something even more important, a legacy of change that might prevent another family from experiencing what mine did. Final update. It's been a year since my last post. So much has happened that it's hard to know where to begin. The Jake Collins Construction Safety Initiative has now inspected over 200 construction sites and implemented new safety protocols that have measurably reduced workplace accidents. My father serves as the chairman of the board and has found a purpose that has helped him process his grief in ways I never thought possible. Richard Bradford's health has stabilized, though he remains under house arrest. He and Ryan have a strained relationship but are speaking again. Elaine has become an unexpected ally, using her social connections to raise funds and awareness for construction safety. As for Ryan and me, we got married 3 months ago. It wasn't the lavish event we originally planned. Just a small ceremony by the lake where Jake used to fish, with our closest family and friends. My father walked me down the aisle and, in a moment I never could have imagined a year ago, shook Ryan's hand before placing mine in it. During our vows, Ryan added a promise I hadn't expected. I vow to honor Jake's memory by continuing to build a safer world, and to never again stay silent in the face of wrongdoing, no matter the cost. There wasn't a dry eye among our guests. We're not naive enough to think that all the wounds have healed. There are still days when the weight of what happened threatens to overwhelm us. But we're facing it together now, without secrets between us. Yesterday, the initiative announced a new scholarship program for engineering students focused on developing safer construction equipment. The first recipient was a young woman whose father died in a construction accident similar to Jake's. When she spoke at the ceremony about turning her tragedy into purpose, I felt Jake's presence so strongly I could almost hear his voice. This isn't the happily ever after I imagined when I first fell in love with Ryan. It's complicated and sometimes painful. But it's also real and meaningful in ways I never expected. We're building something important from the broken pieces of our story, and I think that's a different kind of happy ending, one that honors the brother I lost while creating a future that might prevent others from experiencing the same loss. I still miss Jake every day. But now, when I think of him, I also think of the lives being saved in his name. And somehow, that makes the burden of his absence a little easier to bear.